Hey everybody, today we're here to talk about Dolby Atmos. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it already. It's a new sound technology out there. You may have heard about it in a movie theater or at a friend's house, and maybe you're just wondering exactly what it is. So we're here to clarify a few things on what Atmos is and what it can do for your system. Dolby Atmos, the best way to describe it is it's like a three-dimensional surround sound for your system. Now when speakers were first invented, you had your front left and your front right speaker. You had your front left and front right creating a phantom center image so you could have two channels to your listening. Eventually, two channel expanded to 5 channel, where we had the center channel and the surround speakers added. So now you have not only 3 speakers in the front, but 2 on your side, and maybe even a 7 channel surround sound where there are 2 speakers in the rear. Now, with that, you have all kinds of envelopment and surround sound from the front, the sides, the rear. But what about the top? Now that's where Dolby Atmos really shines, and where it completely redesigns your entire entertainment experience. If you add speakers to the top, imagine you're watching a movie and a plane is flying overhead, or raindrops are falling down on you. Imagine the experience you would feel with having speakers there. You could almost feel like you're surrounded in that entire experience, like you're part of the movie. Now, when it comes to Dolby Atmos, you can do a 7 channel or 5 channel, and the way they describe it is like a 5.1 or 5.2 point something. Now the 5 is the original 5 speakers, your front right, your front left, your center, and your surrounds. The point that comes after the 5 or the 7 is your subwoofers. You may have 1 subwoofer, 2 subwoofers, or even up to 4 subwoofers. So you can have 5.1 point or 5.2 point. Then you talk about your Atmos sound. Now you can have 5.1.2 or 5.1.4. So in this setup that we have here, we have a 5.1.4 setup. We have our 5 speakers, our 2 towers here, our center channel, our 2 surrounds, and 1 subwoofer. And now that's 5.1, but we also have 4 Atmos speakers. So we have Atmos speakers, Atmos drivers built into our tower speakers here. This speaker is by NHT, and they have your main drivers for your mids, your lows, and your highs, and then they have the Atmos drivers. So this guy actually projects sound above, and it reflects off the ceiling and comes back to my listening spot here. So if I'm sitting right here, I've got my Atmos speakers in the front over there. It's my front Atmos. I've got 2 Atmos drivers built into my surround speakers here as well. We'll just take a quick shot of that and show you here. On top of our surround speakers, we have these Atmos drivers built in right over here. So we can actually have rear Atmos, which reflects off the ceiling, comes back here. So I can have a full 3-dimensional surround experience. So when I'm sitting here, I'm watching an Atmos encoded movie, or a scene encoded in Atmos. I've got my front surrounds, my rear surrounds, so I feel like I'm already enveloped. And then let's say, we've got someone talking from the sky, or we've got a plane flying above. So I've now got actually that experience of sound coming from above me, which really makes an incredible difference in your sound experience. I mean, listening to Atmos versus a normal Dolby Digital or Dolby True HD track, it's a huge difference in sound. It takes it to the next level in terms of experience and listening. Now, we've talked about the speakers, but what about the other hardware you require to set up an Atmos setup? You need an amplifier which supports Dolby Atmos. A lot of the newer amplifiers do have that. You want to make sure you have at least 7 channels, so you can have at least a 5.1.2 setup. Generally when we suggest to set up an Atmos setup, we would really highly suggest getting front Atmos and rear Atmos. That way when the sound travels from the front to the rear, or from the rear to the front, you feel that entire experience. Just having the front 2 Atmos speakers doesn't give you the entire experience you should be feeling from Atmos. Also, when you buy a Blu-ray, you may notice that some of the Blu-rays, like this is Mad Max here, it's clearly written Dolby Atmos. So you know that this Blu-ray has Atmos encoded soundstage and Atmos encoded scenes that are going to play. You want to make sure you have a Blu-ray player which also supports Atmos, or if you're streaming from a media player, use a media player which supports the Atmos output, so that you can have the entire surround experience. So now that we've discussed built-in Atmos drivers in some of our speakers, there's another option for Atmos. If you don't want to buy or set up a speaker with a built-in Atmos driver like this one, you can actually install overhead in-ceiling speakers in your ceiling to perform Atmos related sounds. So if you want to wire for an Atmos setup, and let's say a 5.2.4 or 7.2.4, you can actually wire for two ceiling speakers in the front and two Atmos speakers in the rear. This diagram here kind of displays exactly the placement of the speakers. If you have a 5.1.2 overhead speaker setup here, you would actually place your speakers just in the middle. If you just had two Atmos speakers to try and give you more intermediary Atmos sound. If you had four Atmos speakers, you could use the overhead enabled speaker drivers here, or you could actually place ceiling speakers in those positions, and you could get a very good Atmos quality soundtrack or sound, envelopment experience directly by placing your speakers in the ceiling, as opposed to buying Atmos ready speakers like these. It's really more a personal choice, I guess. If you want to have speakers in the ceiling, or if you don't have the room or the space to put the speakers in the ceiling or run the wire, this is a better option than buying a speaker with an Atmos driver built in, or even attaching an Atmos driver to an existing speaker. That's also an option there. So I think we've gone through a lot of the Atmos options here. If you have any questions, you can come to our showroom and take a demo of our 5.1.4 Atmos setup, or you can always contact us. Thank you very much for having us out.